Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University, Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashley Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Fugit.
Ashley and I have been anxiously awaiting this interview for a while now. Months ago, we set out to interview our director of the counseling programs. But here we are now in the new year, instead interviewing the newest assistant dean of the Institute. Dr. Donna Washburn joined the Concordia team nearly 4 years ago and brings years of experience in counseling and social work as well as higher education to our team.
That's right, Gilbert. I love learning more about Donna and her background. She was born in Africa to missionary parents, so her journey is one filled with faith, hard work, and adventure. Today, she shares with us more about her journey as a leader in higher education and how she's utilized her skills, leaned into the support she's been offered, and shared her voice and perspectives from her various seats at the table. Personally speaking, she's been a great friend and mentor to me, so I'm excited for her to share more with all of you today. Let's get started.
Listeners, we are in for an exciting time today. We get to interview our friend, Ashley and I do, Dr. Donna Washburn, who is our assistant dean here at the Townsend Institute. At the time of this recording, this is new, right? A new role for you. So
last 4 weeks, this has taken place.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. We know you weren't just born here at Concordia, right? So tell us a little bit about your journey, how you ended up here, and about yourself.
So, it's an interesting story because actually I wasn't even born in the United States. So you saying not born in Concordia. So I was born to missionary parents in Zimbabwe, Africa, actually, and spent part of my childhood in Africa and South Africa and Zimbabwe. Made it back to the United States as my dad transitioned into pastoring and grew up in that ministry family and really felt a call to the vocation of the helping profession. So counseling and social work, and just felt called to help others. So went to college, became a social worker. That was my undergrad, and my master's, became licensed as a clinical social worker. And professionally, we all have these career plans, right? Or we think, well, this is what I want to do. And I remember in my undergrad, a professor having us write out our life plan, career-wise. And I had written out I wanted to become a therapist and I wanted to work with children. And at some point, maybe I would like to teach and then maybe end my career in a university. And the Lord actually changed that trajectory, and those things all happened, but within about 6 years. I found myself working at a university. I became a clinical social worker and did some clinical work with children and adolescents, and then very quickly really enjoyed teaching. And those strengths were, just there. And a university near where I lived kind of tapped me to do some adjunct work. And next thing I know, I was hired full-time in Christian higher ed. And so I began working in Christian higher ed and working in a behavioral science department with social work students. And then over the years, moved on and got my doctorate in Counselor Education and Supervision. But at the same time, I was getting some administrative experience, and the university was giving me some leadership opportunities. So I spent 20 years in a liberal arts university working in administration and working in counseling programs, social work programs. And it was right before the pandemic. I started feeling like, I don't know if you've ever had a time where you just start feeling a little restless. And I knew God was kind of stirring something in my heart, but I didn't know what that was. And now a colleague of mine who is now at Concordia, or was at Concordia at the time, was reaching out to me like, we have this open position in the counseling program for a director. I think you'd be perfect for it. And I was like, oh, I'm not interested in leaving where I'm at, but I just had this stirring. And this colleague was relentless and just kept every couple weeks sending me, "Are you sure? Would you consider?" And so it was almost one of those fleece moments that I laid out before the Lord. Okay, I will apply. We'll see what happens. And right as the pandemic hit in May of 2020, and the world kind of was locking down, I received an offer to come to Concordia, and I took that leap after being somewhere else for 20 years. Said yes, and have been here ever since. And it was totally the right decision. So happy to be here.
So when you did this in May of 2020, did you actually meet anybody in person?
Well, so I had come out about 2 months earlier to do the interviews, and actually I was flown out. I think we all remember, like, the world shut down in March, and it was like the week before the world shut down. So I remember even being in the airports, and some people were wearing masks, and I was like, "Oh, that's so weird." And then after I got home, the next week, everything shut. And so what was really interesting is, again, the timing of it. So, I'm a mom, I have children, and at the time I had a kindergartner at home still. And now kids were going to be home and remote. And my previous job, I was going to an office 5 days a week. And it was, again, like the Lord just knew, it was a good time in my life to make a switch where I would be working in more of an online world. So yeah, May of 2020, I came on board at Concordia, and every minute since, I've loved it.
All different areas and different roles that you've played in Christian higher education. You talked about being in the classroom, teaching alongside students. Of course, in your role now, you still interface with students, but in a little different role now as assistant dean. So why have you chosen to spend so much time in Christian higher education?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think it truly is it's a mission. And I have always felt that working in Christian higher ed is my vocation, right? I could choose to work in a secular university. There's wonderful programs out there, but to be able to help students integrate faith with their vocational callings is just really it's a sacred experience. And I have always felt that, especially in the field of mental health, which is the areas that I've worked in higher ed, there's some real challenging tensions in that world. And to walk alongside students as they navigate that, and they try to figure out how they can allow their faith to inform their vocation, and do that in a way that's ethical, and do that in a way that's competent, but bring salt and light to the world. That has felt like my own ministry. And so I've just always really, really wanted to influence Christian higher ed to be able to help the students in the fields of mental health. And so I've just been really grateful that I've had those opportunities.
So, Donna, I know you and Ashley have done some research and even presented a little bit on this topic about women in leadership. I am not a woman. And so...
Wow.
So I just making that clear.
Breaking news.
Yeah, to all our listeners as I put this out here. But what are some benefits of being a woman in higher education?
As I think about this, to me, it's just a matter of representation, especially in the fields that I've worked in, behavioral and social sciences and counseling worlds. Over 60% of our students are female. And so I think it's important that they see women in administrative positions and even in faculty positions as they are navigating, the fields that they are in. And so I think it's important, and it's always been for me, that I want to be a good model for our female students, but also for the male students, for them to be able to navigate those relationships as well. I think women bring this added perspective to the table, when decisions are being made. And oftentimes, especially in higher ed, those decision makers are male. So I think for a woman to be able to speak into those processes is really beneficial to the universities and to the students too.
You don't think the men have the correct perspective all the time on this?
I think men have valuable perspectives, but I also think women do too. And sometimes they come from a different, they're able to see things. Just like everybody on the team can add something different. So that's been my experience.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, like you talked about, it's just the representation piece. And right now we're specifically talking about kind of the male-female dynamic, but a lot of these same conversations are being had with regards to ages and generations or ethnicities, right? It's just the representation piece.
Absolutely. And again, for our students, I always, when I think about whatever I'm doing in my work, it always goes back to how does this benefit students, right? We're in education, right? So what are we doing to help students in their trajectory and their careers? And so as a woman in leadership, it's been important for me to do that in a way that is modeling to the students that we work with so that they can then go out into the workplace, into the marketplace, and also bring those skills.
They can do the same, the ripple effect, then for what they can show. Well, that's definitely a clear benefit is to have that platform to be able to do that. But obviously, in all of your years, you've also seen and experienced perhaps some of the hardships and challenges. Talk a little bit about those.
This is one of those like lived experiences, right? So whomever you speak to about their career path, that they can share times that things were more difficult and more challenging. And I think for, women in general, there's a lot of research that does surround challenges that women can have in academia. From the way that students treat female professors to the way that some females, colleagues may treat them differently based on that, to the lack of women in administrative positions. And this is general, research across the United States, across programs, lack of promotion, et cetera. And then similar to what I mentioned before, other challenges is simply like getting a seat at the table, just having the representation. So we just, talked about having equal representation, and in many places in higher ed, women aren't represented equally. And so there's those challenges of how do I do that? I would like to say, though, that I have been so blessed in my career. So I've worked at 2 institutions full time, and then I've had some part-time work at other institutions. And I've just always been really blessed to be offered respect and be offered the opportunity and the positions and offered a seat at the table, so to speak. And the reality is those times that I have really been supported have been by my male colleagues and male administrators. They have been my biggest champions. When I talk to other, say, young women that are rising up or feeling called to leadership positions, we often think about women helping women, and that's a very important piece. But it's almost equally or even more important for our male counterparts to be supporting women in leadership. And that's where I have had the biggest blessings in my life.
Donna, so as you have had leadership positions, right, and in your career at different institutions and things like that, what would you say that how you could encourage others to do or support women in leadership and give them a seat at the table?
So I always like to talk, especially to like my female students and other women sometimes that I've maybe mentored or worked with, allow them to use the skills that they have been given, right? And if it's about competence, it's about excellence in the workplace. And that's been something that like I haven't ever felt like I needed to champion. I'm a woman and I need to, push myself forward for that. I've just tried to really be excellent at everything I've done. Not always has that happened. I've definitely have, mistakes along the way.
Most of the time, most of the time.
But my goal is I want to present with competence. And if I am competent in doing my job, my position to the very best of my ability, that will speak for itself, and then that will open doors. And so that's how I encourage young women that I work with is, lean into doing the very best job you can, and be as competent as you can, and that's what will shine. And that's how we can get seats at the table, right? And so, I ask my male counterparts, when you see strengths in a young woman leader, or you see competence, allow that to shine, allow that to come forth and encourage that. And then it's not so much about, well, I'm a woman, I need this experience. It's, I'm the best person on this team to do this, whatever the task is at hand.
In addition to all your leadership experience that we've been talking about here today, you also, as you mentioned, you're a licensed counselor. You spent decades teaching future counselors, counselor educators, including those here in our own Townsend Institute programs that you've been working alongside the last few years. What's some recent research coming out of the counseling field that you're following?
A lot out there right now on trauma and a lot of different topics in the community, anxiety, depression, things like that. But I think the thing actually I want to highlight is something that just recently was kind of brought forth by Gallup, actually, around loneliness and the topic of loneliness. And Gallup did this study that was a global study across the world. It wasn't even just the United States. And they found 1 in 4 adults report being very or fairly lonely, meaning that it's on the side of being lonely, right? And you might think, oh, lonely, oh, you're a little bit lonely. 1 in 4 adults indicating that. And the reality is, those levels of loneliness lead to anxiety, depression, social isolation, can even lead to early death. Loneliness is a real epidemic. And in May of this year, the Surgeon General of the United States actually issued a warning around the issue of loneliness in the United States and the dangers from loneliness, the negative impact on mental and physical health. And what was really interesting about the Surgeon General and Gallup's poll and Gallup's research was the solution for loneliness is social connection.
Mm-hmm.
And their entire platform around that was we are becoming a very isolated society, especially from the pandemic. But even prior to the pandemic, we have gone away from community living. We've gone away from families being, multi-generation, interconnected, to people are moving away from families and living in individual communities by themselves, essentially. And the solution literally is as simple as social connection. And that social connection can reduce heart disease, can reduce diabetes, can reduce early death. It is just really, in some ways, a stark contrast that simply having some close relationships in your life can change the trajectory of your own mental and physical health. And so why I think that was an important piece to highlight in this podcast is it just dovetails beautifully into what we talk about at the Townsend Institute and how important connection is with one another.
With that, it's making true friends. This isn't just Facebook friend connections, right? Because this whole idea of loneliness, you can be surrounded by hundreds of people and still feel lonely, right? This is, you go back to the safe people, and we talk a lot about, it's not quantity, it's the quality of those relationships. So even just a couple true close relationships can
That's
help.
exactly right. And it's doing things with those people, right? So sometimes people will say, well, yes, I've got close friends, but I haven't talked to them in a month, or I, don't engage with them. When we get together, it's like old times, but they don't get together. So it's just going for walks with people that you are connected with, or sharing a meal together. And, the age of social media, we see that sometimes just having friends over to have a meal is this big ordeal. Your house has to be perfect and the meal has to be catered or well put out, and you have to have table settings. Really, it's let's grab fast food and sit around the living room eating burgers
And have conversation.
and have
right?
conversation, right?
That makes so much sense, right? I mean, it's got kind of amplified during COVID because, I don't even have to go to Target anymore, right? We put it on the app, boom, they bring it out to your car. Amazon, it's one click, and they can bring me whatever, probably a live reindeer now if I need something like that, And so, they got everything. I don't know. I haven't checked for that on Amazon. It seems like
They're sold out.
Yeah, they're sold out on that stuff.
It's not on Prime.
It's not on. It's not on Prime. So, but I think about just having conversations and not worried about everything has to be perfect. We were decorating our neighborhood the other day, and they're like, "Hey, let's all have pizza." And so we had some people come into our house. It wasn't 100%, all put together, and it was great. Kids had fun. We had fun talking to the adults, and it was good to have that connection. And it wasn't planned and structured, and things like that. So I can see where just being intentional and being open to that, right? Now we've almost so overscheduled ourselves that we don't have that openness, that margin in our lives to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think it just reflects, again, the social media presence that we have. We talk about, oh yeah, you have all these friends on social media, but they're not deep. It's just acquaintances. And then everything you put out on social media is almost a facade of what your life really is, right?
It's filtered.
It's filtered, right? It's perfect. So then when we have these other relationships, we think that has to reflect that. So you have to have the perfect house, the perfect dinner, whatever. And the reality is that's very harmful to our mental health. And we're going the opposite direction of what, as humans, we were built for connection and just hanging out on the front porch, right? Watching the kids ride their bikes up and down the street. We need to get back to some of those days.
Well, Donna, we like to end all of our episodes with the takeaway tip. You've shared so much great information just on your journey of being a woman leader here in Christian higher education, and as well as your background in counseling. But what's a takeaway tip you can leave with our listeners?
Yeah, I think the way I've lived my life, and it's worked for me, is open hands before the Lord. And then whatever the Lord puts in my hands, I've just felt a deep commitment to do the best I can. And so my tip is, be open to what God has for you and the strengths and skills you have in your life. And then just do it to the best of your ability, right? And all of us have different stages of life, and there's different times that there are different things before us. And whatever that is, just working to the best of our ability to honor God in what we do.
Thank you so much, Donna. Congratulations. Again, our new assistant dean here, and we're so blessed to get to work with you.
Thank you, Donna, for hanging out with us.
So much. This was great.
Live reindeer is on its way.
I cannot wait for that Amazon delivery.
If you enjoyed the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University, Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.